right, it's a Friday, and we have a new notes page, converting between decimals and fractions. So go ahead and start that new header. Make sure you put this as a title at the top of the next page. And as always, whenever we have a new title, you have to put it into your table of contents. Also, don't forget to have those page numbers a-going. Go ahead and pause the video and copy these notes onto our new notes page. All right. Oh, actually, we should go over them first. So, changing fractions to decimals. First, you divide the numerator by the denominator. So, if we have the fraction 2/10 and we want to turn it into a decimal, we divide the numerator by the denominator. We say, okay, 2 divided by 10. How many times does 10 go into 2? Well, it doesn't. We've got to add a decimal and a 0. How many times does 10 go into 20? 2 times. We bring our decimal straight up. And the decimal for 2/10 is now 2/10, or decimal point and a 2. Okay? Another way you could have done this is, we'll go on. Okay, so changing decimals to fractions. So if we have the decimal, okay, underline the last digit. Actually, let's do this one. Underline the last digit. So this is the last digit. Identify its place value. What place value is the second 2 in? It's in the hundredth place value. Okay, that now becomes the denominator. We're in the hundredth place value. Remove the decimal from the number, and that becomes your numerator. Super, super easy. Okay, so let's do some examples. Let's try some examples. Go ahead and take these decimals and turn them into fractions. See if you can pause the video and try it on your own. Okay, so let's follow the steps for going from decimals to fractions. Step 1, from decimals to fractions. Underline the last digit. So the last digit is right here. So what is our place value going to be? It's going to be the hundredths place. And remove the decimal. You get 125 hundredths. Now we have to simplify that one. How is that going to simplify? Well, we can take 1 out and we'll have 25 hundredths left over. Continue simplifying. 1 and 1/4. Oops. Okay, 1 and 1/4. Go ahead and do the other two if you messed up on the first one. Pause the video if you messed up on the first one and try the other two. Okay, so you notice that the 5 is in the 10th place, so that became our denominator. And 5 is the numerator. Then we simplified to get it to equal to 1/2. Okay, and our last one ended up simplifying to 10 and 7/10. Now you could have just taken this 10 and put it right there, and then done the 7/10 and put it right there. Okay, go ahead now and try these. Pause the video and try these problems out. Okay. Hopefully these are the answers you got. If not, go ahead and pause, go back, look at your notes, see where you might be messing up. Now we're going to switch from going to fractions to decimals, but first, well, that happened. Let's go to fractions, to decimals. So we have 2 and 3/10. So We know the decimal is going to be 2. And we know that this 3/10 has to be turned into a decimal. Okay? We take the numerator and divide it by the denominator. How many times does 10 go into 3? It doesn't, so we have to add a decimal and a 0. How many times does 10 go into 30? 3 times. We bring our decimal up. So we've got 2 wholes and 3/10. Go ahead and pause the video and see if you can figure out the second one. Okay, so as instructions, you take the numerator and you divide it by the denominator. Okay, 50 goes into 5, no times. So we have to add a decimal and a 0. 50 goes into 50, 1 time, perfectly. You bring your decimal up. And it's 1/10. Okay? So now it's time for me to give you a little fun illustration. I like to call turning fractions into decimals using the cowboy and the horse. Okay? So whenever you see a fraction, 3/15, I want you to think of it as a cowboy on the top. I don't know, here's the cowboy. And a horse. There's my horse. So the cowboy is the number 3 and the horse is the number 15. Whenever you go to do your division problem, what number should always go inside of our house? And I like to call this little house because I think it kind of looks like a house. Or, I don't know, you can make it into a house. Okay, so the cowboy goes into the house. Whenever they return home from the fields, the cowboy goes inside the house. And the horse goes outside the house. Okay, so a lot of people think the bigger number has to go inside the house always, but that's not how this works. The numerator has to always go inside the house. So I say the numerator is the cowboy's name. This is Mr. Numerator. And the denominator, his horse, is on the bottom. Okay? So let's try an example of that right here. Go ahead and turn this fraction into a decimal by putting Mr. Numerator into the house and his horse denominator outside of the house. Okay, so hopefully you got 25/100. Okay, if you didn't, go ahead and pause the video and check out my division. Okay, here is a practice problem from the STAR test from a couple years ago. Pause the video and see if you can solve it by turning fractions to decimals and decimals to fractions. Okay, so first you had to take 7 25/100. Then you had to take this number and turn it into a decimal, 2 5/10, or 2 1/2. Okay? Then you had to multiply because it says times its birth weight. After you multiply, this is the number you get. Don't forget when multiplying with decimals, you see how many numbers do I have behind a decimal in my question. And that's how many I need to have in my answer. So hopefully you guys got H. Thank you guys for sticking around and doing this on a Friday. And I hope to see you next week. Have a great weekend.